This here is the low fuel level switch for the John Deere 285. A few other models. I'll put those models up and I'll also put the John Deere part number up for this part. You can't get this part anymore, so if yours doesn't work, then you either have to buy a used one or maybe you can repair it like I did. I didn't think I was going to be able to repair it, so I started to repair before starting the video, but once I got going and saw what was happening, I decided to make this video. If you're familiar with this, this sits in the fuel tank. There's a connection up here. This gets 12 volts from the battery. I don't know which side is ground, but one side's power, one side's ground. And how this works, if it works, is that when the float which is on top of the fuel level, when it reaches all the way down to the very bottom here, it will close the circuit and a light will illuminate on the dash. Well, ours has never worked, and we've had this tractor for 25 years, so I was in there doing another repair and decided to try to have another look at this, and I'm going to show you what the repair is. If you pull yours out and you shake it and you hear this noise, you hear any kind of rattling noise like that, what's going on is, I'll show you in a second, there's a little magnet in here. It's supposed to fit in a certain spot, and if it falls out and it's no longer in that spot, like there or anywhere else around the rim, it is too far, there's too much of an air gap to allow the circuit to close. I just put this piece of tape on here to show, because like I said, I'd already started taking this thing apart and then I decided to do a video. But this is what's going on down at the end. So when this is working properly, that magnet there is in that little spot. I'll put an arrow on it. And you can see that's a particular air gap with respect to the thickness of that wall there. And so when this float reaches all the way down here to the bottom, you can see we have that sensing unit there. That is a reed switch, which is normally open, but it closes when the magnet comes near, and then we get power to the light. Here I've just got alligator clips on those two leads there. I'm in resistance and in continuity mode, so if we simulate the magnet being inside that little float, a little boat float thing that sits on the surface of the fuel, as the fuel level is high, it's up here or wherever, and then it floats down, 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 and when it gets down here, you can see that that closes that switch, and that would allow the light to illuminate on the dash. So what happened in this case is this somehow, it's supposed to be sitting upright in that little spot, but somehow many, many years ago, decades ago even maybe, it went like that. And so when I pulled this out and it was all together, I could hear it rattling, and I thought, what on earth is that about? So I decided to cut it open, and the way that I did that, make a match mark, so you have a way to realign it if you decide to do this. This can't allow any leaks when you get that back in there. I just used a hot knife. If you're using any kind of flame or anything, obviously make sure there's no fuel around and this is nice and dry. But I just used a hot knife and I cut along there. The reason I cut along there is I didn't know what I was going to see inside. You could cut along any other place that you decide now that you know what it looks like inside. So what I'll do to repair this is I'll put this little piece of, this is a magnet, so it likes to attract other things. I'll use these pliers to shove it in there, and it does, once you have it in there, it does stay pretty snug. So I'm surprised that it fell out in the first place, because it's in there. It's in there pretty snug, so no clue how that fell out in the first place. But it's in there. And then what I'll do is I will use my plastic welder to just remelt this same plastic and hopefully get a good seal around there. I cut this bottom off because I wanted to see what was going on down here. In retrospect, I think it would have been better for me to cut it up here, because I'm going to have to be real careful putting that together where I cut it to make sure that the float is not going to interfere with any, like, you know, plastic weld. Now that I know what's inside there, it looks to me like if I would have cut it up here, I could have just slid this whole thing off. I think that's a better place to cut it, because then if you cut it up here, when you go to repair it with epoxy or with the plastic weld or whatever you're going to use to reconnect this, it doesn't matter if it's not smooth, because the float doesn't need to go all the way up here. But the float does need to go all the way to the bottom, because that's where the actual switch effect happens. And I did try pulling this apart. I mean, obviously these are two different parts. There's some way to disconnect them, but I just felt like I was going to break it. Don't cut it at the bottom if you don't have to. If you get in here and your little magnet is in that spot and you're still not working, then try to simulate it. Pull the magnet out and try to simulate it down here at the end and see if that makes a difference. If it doesn't, then you might have to indeed cut this off or somehow get the stem out so you can access this part, because you can see there are some joints down here, and there's a little resistor. If I can get the camera, you can see right there, there's a little resistor there, so we got some soldered joints there. So it could be that you have a failure there, but overall it's a pretty simple device. When you cut it, just realize there's all kinds of stuff in there. So again, I went with a hot knife because I was able to control the depth and I didn't go too far and cut anything. But make your alignment marks, and then this goes back. Well, I'll show you. I'll give you a little simulation here. I don't need that for now. I'll put this on there, and now that it's in that right spot, oops, you can see, oops, sorry, you can see how that works, right? Oh, low fuel. So I'll put this back together now. I'm not going to show that on the video, but I will just try to get this lined up. Here's the plastic welder I'm going to use. This is just that cheapo $15 one from Harbor Freight, the Chicago Electric. I've had this thing for years. Works really well. And when I say hot knife, I should mention, again, if you're going to heat up any kind of blade, like an X-Acto blade or whatever, and you're going to use any type of flame, don't have that flame near your fuel, since you're working on the fuel system. You know, just keep that in mind. Don't want to mix flames and gasoline. So it's not pretty, but it does look like it's sealed up. So I'll make sure that I don't get any air bubbles on there, and that it is indeed floating. Want the float to float, that's for sure. And that looks good. Once your float's back together, be sure to put this on first before you put the end piece on, and make sure that it can move freely up and down the stem. Got it back together here. It's not pretty, but it works. So looks like I'm finally gonna have a low fuel light. So this is ready to go back in. I will do one more test. I'll hook it up in a second and double check. I had already checked this circuit, so it ought to work. As you can see, you got to take a few parts out of the way to get down to this fuel tank. If you want to watch a video about that, check the pinned comment. I will link a video I did a few years ago on this 285 to show you how to get exactly down to this part. I had a fuel line obstruction. I'll show you in that video how to take out the pickup tube and to replace that fuel line in case that happens to you. If you are all the way down here, it's not a bad idea to just go ahead and clean out the fuel tank, because stuff does get in here. So let's go ahead and plug this in and test this. So we'll do one more check here. Go to the run position, and I got the float here in my hand. The moment of truth, and the light comes on. All right, I've never seen that light before. There you have it. Boy, you can't miss that, can you? I guess I don't have an excuse for running out of fuel anymore. I hope this video was helpful for you working on your John Deere tractor. Thank you for watching, and good luck with your repair.